What is digital preservation? Digital preservation is a set of actions that may be taken and managed to ensure that digital materials are accessible as long as they are needed. Digital preservation combines policies, strategies, and actions that ensure access to digital content over time. Digital preservation is also known as a process of maintaining accessibility of digital objects over time. So, what is the purpose of digital preservation? The purpose of digital preservation is to maintain the accessibility to the digital material and protect the document from any threats. The other purpose of digital preservation is to ensure the authenticity of preserved digital material and preserve physical media to any damage by ensuring environmental control. Okay, next is the mission and vision of digital preservation. The mission of digital preservation is to maintain the accessibility to the digital materials, and the visions of digital preservation is to ensure that the preserved digital material are authentic and to preserve damage and deterioration of the physical media by ensuring an environmental control.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is SITI binti SHAHUDI, and I would like to continue the presentation with the policy of digital preservation. The policy here explains why certain material must be preserved. The policy for preservation of digital archive must specify how other policies should be applied to the collections and management of digital material that the archive want. This policy should ensure that its users will have an ongoing access to the digital material collections that the archive has held. The activities that include to manage the life cycle of digital resources are obtained, preserving and making accessible electronic primary source material that document the organization's history. Preserve and make it available electronic works that reflect the organization's heritage, missions and value, and support the research, teaching and learning needs. Last things for policy of digital preservation is rules and responsibilities. This is to determine who should be included in discussions about maintaining and preserving the digital document inside and outside the archive. Then, the responsibilities of performing digital preservations of the archival materials are charged by the Digital Collections Management Preservation Action Committee and the archiving. Next is budget. This is to dedicate a portion of the organization's budget of the digital preservation program. The whole expenditure and budget will be around 15,000 and higher. This budget covers the digital maintenance upgrading of the program every 2 to 3 months throughout the year. Next is Human Resource. Director General are in charge for supervising and managing all the activities that are related to administration, management and preservation. DG also will advise the Record Building Agency to implement the building procedures standards and advise them about the collection, classification and disposal of the records. And DG will develop, organize, promote and evaluate the procedure to improve the record system. For archivists or record manager, they will review the electronic records that the organizations have. Archivists will also establish the plan and method to assign the long-term access to electronic records, and they will also respond to the research requests and facilitate access to the record to the fullest extent compatible with the public interest. Content specialists are in charge with evaluating, obtaining, and handling digital materials in order to set standards. Metadata specialists will inspect and ensure that digital material are reported according to standards policy that allow for long-term access. Lastly is IT technician. IT technician will in charge in installing the applications or software, backup data, purchase hardware, establish applications policy, and execute system audits. IT technician also will troubleshoot, repairing, and maintaining the software and hardware component. They also need to know how to customize the software and hardware component. And that's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
For facilities and storage, the size of archive and the development of the archival program will determine the amount of space and facilities needed. The prospective type of media to be stored, the archive organizational environment, the potential business for the archive to support and serve, the types of function and services should all be considered when planning an archival facilities. The following suggestions are for the bare minimum of facilities and equipment required for an archive to function properly, which are fire-resistant, security system, light and temperature for the storage. Firstly, the archive should install a fire-resistant or fireproof structure with a proper heat or fire detection and suppression system. These include installing smoke and heat detector and fire extinguisher. Next, security system. It is important for an archive to be protected by a good security system. For example, lock must be installed in all archival areas to prevent from unauthorized access. The areas locked only be accessible to an authorized personnel. Then, an archive must be easily accessible to a loading dock and elevators. Other than that, leaking pipe and wet basement should be avoided when storing archival material. For the storage, light is important to be controlled in all archival areas because paper-based can degrade faster when they are being exposed to ultraviolet light. Thus, windows and fluorescent lighting in the archive, particularly display areas and open shelves, must have an appropriate UV light filter screen. For the temperature, an archive must maintain a constant temperature and relative humidity to reduce the deterioration of archival material. For the temperature and relative humidity in the storage, an archive must maintain a constant temperature and relative humidity to reduce deterioration of archival materials. 60 degrees Celsius to 21 degrees Celsius of temperature and 40 to 50% of relative humidity are highly recommended to store archival material. There are 4 digital preservation issues, which are authenticity and context issues, obsolescence, migration, and storage media. Authenticity and context issues. The preservation of the validity of document content with the context in which it was written is probably the most difficult task in digital preservation. To ensure that electronic documents keep their credibility, authenticity, and endurance, they must consistently maintain in accordance with proven standard at each stage of the process. Technology preservation plan, technology emulation strategy, and digital information migration strategy are the 3 techniques to overcome the issue of authenticity and context. The next digital preservation issues is obsolescence. Obsolescence can be defined as the process of the archival materials becoming no longer useful or needed in the future. In terms of archive, it is the most difficult issue in digital preservation program. Obsolescence may affect the hardware, software, and even the organizational data in a stored medium. The problems in obsolescence occurs in retrieval and playback technologies, which usually associated with the equipment and software for accessing and retrieving information for digital materials is probably more deceptive and challenging than media deterioration. The newer version of the file format have outdated version, and the current file or relevant standard may no longer support because devices, processes, and software for recording and storing the information are regularly being replaced with new equipment on a 3 to 5 year cycle driven by market forces. Another major difficulty in digital preservation is migration. Moving to a new or advanced digital standard without compromising the realities of the current standard is referred as digital migration. It can be defined as a series of planned tasks meant to facilitate the periodic transfer of digital materials from one hardware or software configuration onto another, or from one generation of computer technology to the next generation of computer technology. Before migrating any digital asset, two key decisions should be made, which are the format and the application. In order to accommodate the properties or authenticity of original subject, one must decide on the location or format to be utilized, as well as the application software to carry out migration process. Storage media is another issue in digital preservation program. Though it is a part of digital obsolescence, they require an independent treatment because storage media is the basis of digital preservation program. Computer files, compact discs, microfilm, and cassettes are the examples of digital materials that are available or stored in distinct physical formats. The majority of the storage medium can be reused. Magnetic and optical media, which are reusable recording media for digital materials, are susceptible to deterioration and catastrophic loss. Since they can degrade faster, the period of making decisions and taking actions to prevent loss of content and the quality of recorded information is measured in years, as it is with the print forms. Advantages and disadvantages of digital preservation program. A digital preservation will truly help organizations to manage their information, and thus the information can be retrieved easily by the employees. Digital preservation procedures and guidelines help to protect legal and financial value of organizational data. The main goal of digital preservation is to maintain the legal value while minimizing the danger of claim or lawsuit. The advantages of digital preservation include information in any format has been evaluated and preserved, accessibility to the information is simple, and multiple access is possible, which means multiple users can access to the same resources at the same time. The disadvantages of digital preservation are digital storage media are subject to relatively rapid decay. Digital information needs specific computer hardware and software since they are machine dependent. Hardware and software may obsolete in 3 to 5 years of cycle. Besides, copyright holders must give approval for any preservation scheme, and staff expertise are required to handle the digital information.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is HAMIZAH IZZATI binti Muhammad SUPIAN. Next, I would like to explain about disaster planning. Disasters are sudden, unexpected, and unwelcome. There are two types of principles that can cause of disaster, which are natural disaster and man-made disaster. Then, disaster planning refers to a set of well-practiced procedures for minimizing the impact on the digital archive and restoring the building and its content to usable condition in the shortest period feasible. Disaster planning divides into four important phases, which are prevention, preparedness, reaction, and recovery. Prevention is referred to as the action done to reduce the danger of illegal entry, fire, and flooding, as well as the damage caused by a disaster. Prevention makes an organization able to identify and reduce the danger provided by the structure, its equipment and fixture, and the natural hazard in the surrounding. For example, the action can be taken to minimize the risk of disasters, such as the use of suitable storage equipment that protect material, the creation of secure copies, and specific arrangements for material during unusually high-risk time. Next, preparedness. Preparedness concerned with producing and documenting the disaster plan and keeping it up to date. Preparedness is the keyword for getting ready to cope with disaster. In the case of disaster, preparedness also includes protocol for informing and gathering key personnel, as well as forming and training an in-house disaster response team. There are some steps in preparedness when making disaster planning in the organization, such as develop a written preparedness, response, and recovery plan. Reaction in disaster planning context refer to the immediate action aftermath of a disaster. Reaction concerned with the procedure to follow when a disaster occurs. As the reaction time passes, the attention shifts away from immediate emergency problem and towards repair, utility restoration, re-establish and clean up. The most important objective of reaction phase is to ensure that people are safe from danger. Recovery is the process of rebuilding after a disaster happens. It is used to rebuild the organization after disaster happened for returning operation in organization back into normal. To restore a stable and usable condition for both disaster site and damaged material, it includes establishing a program to recover damaged material, cleaning the disaster site, and analyzing factor, effect, and other criteria related to the disaster. In the context of preservation in digital archive, decision must be made by responsible officer regarding which material must be restored to usable condition and what is the best way to do it. Next point is security management. Security management can be defined as the process of identifying an organization asset, then developing, documenting, and implementing policy and procedure to safeguard those assets. In digital archive preservation, security management can be defined and checked on digital resources that will be conducted on a regular basis to protect against data loss. Digital archives are responsible to establish the level of security required for the digital preservation programs such as the space, equipment, store digital objects, and others. Then, its purpose is to establish the criteria and metric for ensuring that sufficient security measures are in place and will maintain as a component in the infrastructure. In conclusion, digital preservation for archive can make more information being created in digital form. Then, for the continuous consistency with the organization mission and strategic objective, preservation program plans and service must be evaluated and updated on a regular basis. Overall, digital preservation can bring so much benefit to an archive, especially digital archive, if all of the requirement needed is followed well to maintain and handling record in the organization.